consumed by that well would otherwise belong to some senior downstream of Deweese, and most likely downstream of Pueblo. So we can replace the depletion from that well with a release out of Deweese, a release out of one of our main stem structures, or Twin Lakes Reservoir, Turquoise Reservoir, North Fork Reservoir, any of those structures that are not within the Grape Creek drainage or even out of Pueblo Reservoir. That again, the concept is the source of the water, your replacement water is coming into the stream system at a point that is below the point of the diversion or the depletion, but it is still coming into the system above the water right that's entitled to the water.
Did the light bulb come on?
Yes,
Did
that was
help?
helpful, yes.
See-
Only for that time, that day or week or whatever, not all year round.
Did anyone tell you we're saving Conquistador Reservoir in case there's a wildfire in that area? It's not just used for fishing.
Okay.
I have a question right back here.
Now, with the exchanges, can they go the other way? Could somebody in La Junta say, we're going to leave our field fallow this year, so you can have more water upstream? Can they do that kind of exchange backwards?
Yes. Yeah, and again, and that does happen. The district, Upper Arkansas District does not do that, but there are other entities like the Lower Arkansas Valley Water Conservancy District that has this pilot program going on where they dry up irrigated land below Pueblo Reservoir, and that water that would have been consumed on those irrigated fields by La Junta, they store up in Pueblo Reservoir.
Or it could be
Or even further up, typically in Pueblo Reservoir, and then that water can be piped up to Colorado Springs. But again, that's not the
improve
district.
stream flow.
Or it could improve the stream flow, sure.
But not without a change of water rights, going to water court and changing the use of the water.
Right.
For an exchange, for exchange, you need
In
to?
order to do what you're suggesting, they would have to go to court to do it. The consumptive use analysis, find out what the historic consumptive use is and what you really own, and then go to court and get a decree.
Yeah,
You're talking ag water
you can't just on a whim say, I'm not going to irrigate my lower 40 acres. I'm going to put that over here. All of that, well, that sounds really good. All of that has to go through water court for that exchange to ever take place. And so there are some pilot projects in the lower district that they're looking at some of that. And there's some projection tools that we've spent a lot of money on in trying to figure out what that consumptive use is, because understand that we can only move consumptive use. We can't move the total water line. So I want to finish up here. Exempt and non-exempt wells. Everybody clear about that? I mean, this, if we don't have this basic stuff, then I'm going to be talking right over the top of your head, and that's what I'm not going to do. Sharon.
I think what happened is he explained what the exempt one was, but he did not explain what the unexempt one was.
Okay. Kendall, you're up.
At the risk of sounding really flippant, a non-exempt well is any well that is not exempt. So
Good answer.
If you don't meet those strict criteria in the statute for a small capacity exempt well, which again, they're going to be looking at the amount of water you pump. You're limited to a specific flow rate. For most of them, it's 15 gallons per minute. There's a couple where you can do a little more, and they're going to look at the type of use.
It doesn't have anything to do with acreage?
Yes. It can. So if you have a 35-acre parcel, you can get one of those domestic exempt wells. You can also get a stock water and exempt well permit with that amount of acreage. If you have a parcel that is less than 35 acres in size, it depends on when it was legally created. If it was subdivided into that configuration before, I'm going to forget the exact date, in 1972, Jerry might be able to help me. May 3rd. Yeah. We're close enough for 1972. You can still get an exempt well permit for that parcel that's less than 35 acres in size, but you're going to be restricted to in-house use only. And so Again, it depends on the combination of what you want to do and how big your parcel is and when it was created. I can try to go through all those if anyone has any specific examples maybe afterwards, but the idea is there's a statute that for certain small uses you can get an exempt well permit that is not subject to administration within the prior appropriation system. If you don't meet those criteria and you want to drill a well, you're non-exempt, you're subject to administration, and in Division 2 you have to have a plan for augmentation.
The Copper Gulch area is a prime example of pre-1972. We have those 5-acre lots with wells on them.
Senate Bill 35 is what created the exempt wells, okay? We didn't do that. Colorado State Legislature did that. I just want to be clear on that. Couple other little questions here. Can we sell water out of the district? No. Short, simple, no. Can't do it. We cannot sell water out of the district. No. It's not our goal. Can we lease water? Yes.
How did the water go up H2O? That was sold off.
Okay, we didn't do that. So I'm going to mix just a little bit here. There's a thing in Colorado,
You're getting worse now.
granted to us under the Constitution called private property rights. So that man had the total right to sell his water and sell his ranch. And I will stand up here, I'm going to tell every one of you, I've been around here a long time, my family's been around a long time. I am very private property rights oriented individual. So I stand behind the man to have the right to do that. While it may make me sick to my stomach, he had every right to do that. And if I didn't want to see that happen, then I should have stepped up and bought that ranch. I didn't. So he had the right to sell that water. Another municipality came in and purchased that water, and we call that buy and dry, and there will come a day when that water will leave Custer County.
Did you all work that?
Did we work that? Okay, so when that case first came about, absolutely, we worked on that case. That's one of the jobs the upper district does. Every month, we get a list of the resumes, they call them. Everyone that's doing any water transaction in the state of Colorado out of Division 2, we look at. So when that first came out, their engineering was like 800 acre feet. Our engineer said, we think that was just a wee bit outside of the scope of what that water right will actually yield. And we got that beat down to like 110 or 20 acre feet.
That's where we were at.
That's where we were at. We said, that's all the water that you have. So you can see that's a huge difference. We saved Custer County a boatload of water right there. If you don't think 800 acre feet of water coming off above your ranch will impact you, it absolutely will impact you. And that's some of the things that we do on a daily basis. That's number one. Our mission, if you look at our mission statement, this upper district's mission statement, it's to protect senior water rights. It's to protect every water right in the upper basin. That's what we're here for. That's why we're here to talk to you about augmentation today, because I am not, and I stated at the last board meeting, I am not going to force this down anyone's throat. That's Tim Canterbury speaking. You have my word on that. I'm here to offer because you have to have storage. You heard you have to have a bucket to put water in. Then you have to be able to release that water and monitor that water and refill that. You have to have all these rights. You all can do every one of these augmentations on your own. If you've got a wallet that's way thicker than I think it is, and you want to go to water court and you want to start buying these ranches and going to court and changes from irrigation to M&I uses and augmentation, you can do that. I'll applaud you for doing that. You'll be one of the first ones that's ever done it and done it correctly. And so with that being said, that's what the district, I'm here to look out for that. We're here to offer that we feel very comfortable with our engineering, that we can augment that small portion of Custer County underneath, no speculation. We have the water, we have the storage vessels in place. We can augment a very minimal portion of Custer County and do it correctly and put some water back into the stream to keep those water rights whole. So with that being said, I'll get off my soapbox and I'm going to open it up for questions, and you all can have at me.
Only, it's not a question, because you're on a roll and you got a voice for it. A little more education might help take some of the rumor and mystique out of what the district is and how it's, there's many districts in Colorado. The whole point that in 72, you need to define that it was recognized we need to keep the water in the state, but what we care about is keeping it in the valley. And so, and I'm sure that's the same with each of the other districts. So tell us the authority and all that allows you to stand there and say, you're going to keep it here in Custer County.
Kendall, you can quote it. It was on your first slide, the authority that's granted under the Conservation Act, and I don't remember the exact number
So
of it.
and from a government point of view, you're not government. You're go ahead, explain it.
Okay.
So the Water Conservancy District is it's a local government entity. It's sometimes the phrase quasi-municipal entity is used. It's a standalone political subdivision. That's another term that's used. Political subdivision of the state, organized pursuant to the Water Conservancy Act, which is a subsection of Title 37 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. That statute lays out the district's powers. And the district was formed pursuant to that statute 40 years ago,
79.
more or less.
69.
79, 40 years ago. And so within its boundaries, which includes Custer County, the district has the authority to complete works and to, facilitate the beneficial use of water within its boundaries. Is that where you're looking for, like a statutory source of authority, or was it?
And your mission is to keep that water in the area for use here. Because what we don't want to see is some big farm downstream have all the money in the world, like the H2 deal, and get a rancher up here that's ready to retire, and you get enough of them retired, pretty soon we're a dry land farming up here, and it's gone.
Well, and I want to say this. Listen, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that will never happen again. I am not going to do that, because it can happen again. I don't want to see that happen again. But if it does happen, I want to be on your side representing you and making sure that those numbers are correct, number one. If they are going to take water out of this valley, that they only take what they're entitled to and not one drop.
Meaning if you can't stop it. Or
Yes.
Well, you didn't stop the H2O ranch. Why did the water courts let Munn Shakely sell the water rights? This whole valley is hydraulically connected. You cannot take water out of one spot without
I'll tell you what, if
affecting
you
all
go
of
back
it.
and change Colorado's constitution that says I don't have the property right to sell that water, then we'll talk. And until then, I can't change anything that took place.
Mr. Canterbury, I appreciate you coming here today, and I appreciate all of you coming. Could you answer why today you're changing the plan that's currently in place? What is different now than wasn't a year ago, 2 years ago? I know about 5 years ago or so, you presented an augmentation plan, a new plan, and then you withdrew it. What is it that you're trying to accomplish by redrawing these blue lines? Why are we doing this?
Okay, and fair question, and I'll take a stab at it, and then I'll let Kendall address it as well. So there's absolutely no speculation on this blue line that's drew up here today. The water rights and the vessels and the storage the district owns today. Didn't own them when we were here in 2009. We didn't own those. And we had that whole list. Ranchers said, hey, we'd be interested in having a vessel here, but we didn't have it. Today, we have that water. there's absolutely no speculation when I stand here and tell you that we can augment underneath those storage vessels that's here today and the water that we own that's in those vessels. That's an affirmative assurance that I can give you today. I can't do anything outside of that, but that's the difference that we're looking at today. So I'm here offering that. I'm not going to force this on you. If you tell me, Mr. Canterbury, you pack up your crap and you get on back down the road, I'm going to listen to you.
That's not what I'm asking.
No, and I know that, but I'm just putting it out there. This board, and I'm going to speak for this board, I know these guys that sit on this board with me. That's not our mission at all. And I've already taken the shame, and I deserve that. I'm going to take that, I'm going to own it. But I want everyone to be comfortable with what this board, this district is trying to offer today. For instance, if you have a bed and breakfast, someone comes in to the county and says, you know what, I want to do a little bed and breakfast. They have to have commercial water. Where are they going to get that? Are we going to have another failed augmentation plan? Or if they're inside of our boundary, can we say, we can help you guys do that? That's what I want to do. I want to be a partner up here. I'm not going to be an enemy. I will not go down that road. So there's a lot of individuals in here, a lot of gray hair in here, old families. We grew up together. We're neighbors. They know me. So
The point is, inside your boundary, you don't have to buy it from you anyway.
They still gotta buy it.
no,
If you want to augment it,
if I want to augment that well inside of that boundary, well, you still have to come and pay for the depletions
Right.
that I'm going to put back into the stream.
that's what
So
you,
you're selling the water.
it's yourself. I mean, you're the one that is making the trade. So,
Yes,
That's we bought all the water.
because we own the water today. And I'm not
where else
taking
are we
it.
going to augment it?
But
Right.
it's not a for-profit enterprise. None of us are shareholders getting dividends. It's no different than Round Mountain charging a certain monthly service fee for the water that it puts in its customers' taps. That there's a cost to operate the plant, and you have to take in revenue in order to cover
It
the
costs
cost
us
of the
money to
plant.
keep our reservoirs approved by the state and in operational form. That's, so we charge for that. This lady right here.
Listen, I don't think
No,
you
that
didn't
lady
answer.
behind you.
You didn't answer Jay's question, and he's an attorney, and I'm going to help him stand up for himself. I don't know where you went off on a tangent. You were talking about going to Mars or something. He asked you a very simple question: what's different from the last time you tried to
they own the
get a
water
plan
now.
approved?
They own the water now.
Jay,
We own the water and the vessels. We didn't own them.
What's a vessel?
Dams,
The structure, the
reservoirs.
earthen structure that holds the water.
Well, I'm sorry you can't use the word lake or pond anymore. I'm not with it.
This lady behind you has a question.
I spend a lot of time trying to teach urban people that food doesn't come from the grocery store, it comes from agriculture. I see a parallel here in that the water that would go to the bed and breakfast doesn't come from Upper Ark. It comes from the water rights that are now held by agriculture. So I wonder how this interacts. Could
So-
you explain it for us, please?
Sure. So I would disagree with the premise of the statement that the water is going to come from agriculture. The Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District's portfolio is broad. So there's Frying Pan, Arkansas Project Water, which is Trans Mountain Water. There's Twin Lakes Project Water, which is Trans Mountain Water. There are water rights that once upon a time were used in agriculture. But the two that are in this plan, one is the A. Katzenstein Ditch, the other is from what's known as the Friend Ranch down by Poncha Springs. Upper Ark acquired its interests in those water rights long after they had been acquired by the municipal or real estate developer interest that originally bought the land, took the water off the land, and changed it to some other use. But when those other proposed uses didn't come to full fruition, that historic consumptive use credit was available to put to new uses. In the case of Herna Basin Lodge, they decided to scale down their operation. They are no longer going to do snowmaking. That created by scaling down their operation, that created the water that the district purchased and now has available for use in its augmentation plans. And that interest was originally acquired with having augmentation in Custer County in mind. And so the other sources of water, like Twin Lakes, as I mentioned earlier, because of exchanges, we are able to take water from Aspen. For any of you that don't like Aspen, we can take water from Division 5, the Colorado River, and we can put it to use in Custer County because we're able to exchange that water up into storage in Deweese Reservoir and Conquistador Reservoir during times of high flow and then release it during times of need. And in fact, we did that this year, and George probably has the numbers. How much Twin Lakes water did we put in Conquistador this year?
It actually was last year.
For what?
We, during the high flows of 17, actually not 18, so 17, we were able to exchange, I think it was a little over 30 acre feet of Twin Lakes water from Pueblo Reservoir.
So 30 acre feet of Twin Lakes water got stored in Conquistador Reservoir. So that's what that would have been, a much more empty reservoir or vessel or whatever word you want to use for it, had it not been for the district being able to do that exchange.
So
The Conquistador.
So you actually
Yeah,
added
you are the
more water.
grocery store. That's what you are. You're not, in my analogy, you are the equivalent of the grocery store.
Well, we're a little more than
In my experience, and I've helped clients with development of augmentation plans outside umbrella areas, and typically what I see there is they don't have the portfolios, so the only source of water is the ag water, so that the ag water has to be dried up, stored. They don't have those other options, so the good thing with these umbrella plans is in my opinion, they actually preserve or slow down the need for dry up of agricultural lands because there's a larger portfolio to pick from, rather than typically most people in rural areas, they only have one item in their portfolio, it's their agricultural rights.
Yeah. Right here. Wait, one second.
Your analogy made me think of something, and that is that if you didn't have a grocery store in Custer County, you'd all be eating only what you could produce yourself. And because you have a grocery store, you got flexibility. You can eat your own food or stuff you hunt or grow, or you can use stuff from somewhere else and introduce more flexibility and variety into your diet. And as somebody who's dealing with land use planning in Chaffee County, this augmentation plan does fit that analogy in the sense that it does provide more flexibility for your planning commission and your county commissioners and thereby the citizens to decide we would like to introduce more flexibility into the area covered by the blue line. So it's the fact that this plan were to be implemented doesn't make this an accomplished fact. It just creates the potential to do it, where yes, you could augment the well to allow for the bed and breakfast that might not otherwise be, or you could allow for higher density if you wanted to in that area on well and septic, or you could augment evaporative loss on more ponds for the kids to fish. There's a whole spectrum of uses that right now, by Colorado water law, really aren't available to you at any kind of reasonable expenditure of effort and money. And this would give you the flexibility to do those things and still protect the surface water rights that you're talking about. There's a clearly defined connection in Colorado water law, both the courts and the state engineer between groundwater and surface water. And we all know this, when we have really dry years, a couple in a row especially, you see the well levels start to go down. Really wet years, you see them come back up. And so there's definitely a connection there. And so if you are allowing more wells that are going to allow outside uses, and there will be evaporation and some loss of water, or if you're going to have ponds where you have surface evaporation, you're going to have potentially a depletion to the system, and that will affect surface water rights. By augmenting those depletions, that evaporation in most cases, you prevent those depletions from happening and still allow these beneficial uses to happen. And so you may decide, we don't want any subdivisions. Fine, that's your choice. That has nothing to do with us. But we are bringing you the opportunity to allow a wider spectrum of uses and help you economically and efficiently cover the impacts of that, if that's your decision.
Okay, I want to move on. Tom?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. First of all, thank you, folks, for coming down here today. This was a request from commissioners and the citizenry that attended your meeting in January. And we asked, hey, can you get together with us? And originally, it was offered for the commissioners or whoever to come up, and we said, hey, it doesn't do us any good to go to Salida. We want you folks to come to Custer County so our people can have a chance to visit with you. Really applaud you for that. Thank you all. I know it takes time out of your day to do that. I don't remember who said it now, but somebody said it, and I want to reiterate it because I want to be fair. I've learned a lot about water, and one of the things I didn't understand when it comes to an augmentation plan is you're only augmenting consumptive use water.
We can only use consumptive use water in the augmentation plan. We are only augmenting the depletion, the difference in the depletion.
Depletion, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if it's a well and a septic combined, like you said, it might be 95% of that water is going to return return stream flow. So we're only talking about the difference of that.
That's right.
Okay. I got a couple questions for you because these aren't necessarily my questions, although some of them line up with things I've wondered about myself. As I understand it, and I've looked at those graphs over the last year or so, is it fair to say that Upper Ark owns about 107 acre-feet of water in Conquistador 1 and 2?
I'm going to ask the engineer to answer that.
Let me go on then. And
okay.
Then the next question would be how much water do you own in Lake Deweese? My understanding is about 10 acre-feet. But you can address those as we go along here. Are there still shares of Twin Lake water for sale to anybody that has the money to buy it?
Yes, sir. Short answer, yes, sir.
Do you know roughly the market price of that water?
50 to 55.
No, that's a little high.
A little high, 45?
35 to 45.
Okay.
All right. In the AUG plan, it's 55,000 an acre foot.
No. 35.
Sorry, not
45,000
Yeah.
a share.
35, and they do call them shares up there,
Yes.
right?
Share is about 0.9 acre feet.
Okay, almost an acre foot. Yeah, so 35,000 for an acre foot. In your proposed AUG plan, you have priced that water at 1/10 of an acre foot for $8,000.
No, $3,580 a tenth of an acre foot depletion. So that's $35,000 an acre foot.
Okay.
Depletion.
35,000 an acre foot.
It's a 1/10 of an acre foot per depletion. Okay, so you have to have, you may not have a full 1/10 of an acre of depletion. You may have 2/10 of an acre of depletion. So depending on how much depletion you have, is what that's going to cost. Okay?
Got it. So I know it's hard to answer these, but let's say that I want to augment a domestic well on less than 35 acres. What kind of depletion is it cost? How much augmented water would I have to either buy myself or pay through the development of a...
So what are you going to do? That's the number one question. What are you gonna do? And
Water my
then-
horses and water my grass.
How much grass?
An acre or less.
The minimum you can purchase is a base unit, which is 1/10 of an acre foot of consumption. That's enough for your in-house uses and a limited amount of outside use, whether it's stock watering or landscape irrigation. Certainly not an acre, but maybe 500 to 1,000 square feet. Like
About 15
a small lawn in front of a house, not a spread. And so that base unit, to allow for the augmentation of that domestic use, is about $3,500. So if you do the math, that's about the exact same price as a share of water in Twin Lakes. The difference is you're augmented. It's a turnkey solution. You pay that price and you're done. You do not have to go to water court. If you go buy a Twin Lakes share, you now have a source of replacement water, but you still have to pay the engineer, pay the attorney, and spend the 2 years in water court to get your decree.
And build a storage vessel to make sure your replacements can be made in the
And so-
wintertime.
And you may
so-
get it, you may not after you go through court.
Yeah, it's not
You may
gonna
not
get
get
it.
it.
Okay, so
50,000
one other thing here, then there's an annual maintenance and storage fee. So it's a one-time purchase fee, and then an annual maintenance and storage fee of $165, $165 per year, per annually, and that's so we can keep the vessels up.
I want to, I'm sure you guys know this, but if you don't, I wanted to explain to you that the county commissioners have filed a statement of opposition. We included a copy of that to your attorney. I'm assuming you are aware of that, but if you're not, I want you to know that.
We're aware of
And
that.
here is why the county commissioners did that. Because we want to be privy to every document that comes out of the Division of Two Water Court.
As you should be.
There was no other decision based from the county commissioners to oppose that, I don't believe, other than that fact I just stated.
As you should be. Tom, I applaud you guys. That's correct. Absolutely.
Same reason you already talked about, communication.
That's exactly right. There's a man in the back, been very patient. I did not forget you.
Mr. Canterbury, I like open-ended questions because sometimes the answer is better than the question. Within human control or the control of your organization, my question is worst-case scenario.
As far as worst case scenario, as far as
For water rights,
Your organization or human control?
there is a statute that says in every plan for augmentation, there's really one sentence that has to go in every single plan for augmentation. That sentence is, the division engineer shall curtail any use of water when the depletions are not replaced in time, location, and amount. And so the worst case scenario, as I see it, is for, and again, we're kind of dealing with hypotheticals here, because I don't put this within the realm of possibilities, but hypothetical, the district's not able to replace the depletions, the people who are participating in the plan are not able to divert the water, therefore, there's still no injury to the senior surface water rights. That's really the worst case scenario I can come up with.
Yeah.
Tim, you stated that you guarantee no injury, or you won't support the plan. Do you have aquifer mapping? Do you have radioisotope proof that the aquifer flows in a manner that your replacement of depletions within the blue line would not be serviced from outside of the blue line at every location inside that blue line?
I'll let the engineer, and then I'll give you the cowboy version.
So, really, when we're talking about impacts to the streams, we sometimes talk about alluvial aquifers or shallow aquifers. So, the standard practice is the surface topography also dictates the direction of groundwater flow. And what's unique about these plans is everyone that desires to come within the plan has to submit an application to the district. And then at that application basis is when we get to find out the information about their well. And if they do fall within either those alluvial or shallow groundwater conditions. If, for example, there are some cases where typically these shallower wells are in the hundreds of feet deep, or I have seen wells people come in and they want there's 1,000-foot deep or a 1,200 foot, something that's very, very, very deep, and the location and the exact timing of where that impacts the rivers, that's typically outside what we have built into these umbrella plans. So it's really on a case-by-case basis as the wells come in. I can't tell you right now, the district is part of a sponsorship of the USGS that's doing a groundwater study in the wet mountain valleys along the alluvial range that covers the upper portions of our blue line. So that information will be available in the past to dictate the concurrence with the blue line impacts. But no, we haven't done any isotope type groundwater monitoring or research.
Well, we told you earlier before everybody got here, this valley is hydraulically connected, and I described what it looks like under the surface, and you didn't seem to know that, which surprised me, that you don't understand the fundamental geology of this entire area.
I disagree. I do believe I understand
I'm the one that taught
geology.
you what it looks like before everybody walked in.
Okay, Tom, I want to back up just, hang on 1 second. I'm getting older and I'm in my...
I want to follow up on that same question.
I'm going to be right back to you. Tom, you asked a very specific question on how much water was in Conquistador and Deweese. I want to answer that. Kendall.
So Tom, it's important to distinguish between water rights and storage space. In the case of Conquistador, the district owns, I believe it's 30 acre feet of storage space.
It's firm storage space.
Firm storage space, and the right to store some water in HPL space when they don't need it. That's different than the yield of the water rights that the district can store in there. The A. Katzenstein Ditch number 1 water right, the district's interest in that, on average, over a long period of time, is going to average something close to 100 acre feet per year, a little less, 98 acre feet a year. So Deweese, the district has basically 60 acre feet of storage space. The district does not own water rights decreed to Deweese Reservoir. The district uses that space to store any other water right that's in its portfolio, whether it's the A. Katzenstein water or water like Twin Lakes water that it stores by exchange.
So if I heard you correctly, then Buffer Arc owns 98 feet of acre feet of water in Conquistador 1 and 2.
Well, out of the A. Katzenstein Ditch water right, on an average annual basis.
On an average yield.
In 2018, I don't think we got any. But on average, I think we're tracking along that historical average of 98. That water can be stored in Conquistador. It can be stored in Deweese. It can be stored in Pueblo. We can also, as I mentioned earlier, we can store non-Katzenstein water in Conquistador. We've stored Twin Lakes water in Conquistador Reservoir before. So, storage space, water rights, two different issues.
Robert, thank you for being patient.
Based on what I understood of what you said, you don't know what aquifer is actually out there. And you are saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that you will not necessarily guarantee that you will replace a depletion through this augmentation plan if the well structure doesn't meet your criteria.
No, what I said is I don't know exactly what each well's aquifer will connect to, but as far as the process is, once you know that aquifer, this plan's set up to submit based on some standard engineering transmissivities and other aquifer information per the type of aquifer. The application gets submitted to the Division of Water Resources for acceptance on the aquifer properties as far as impact to the stream and the timing.
What does that mean? I heard you say
Sure.
earlier that on a case-by-case basis, if the well was very deep, then you would understand at that point,
Right.
do you drill it, do you do a study, do you know the aquifer then, or what?
So what
How do you
happens
do-
is
how
that
do you do it on a case-by-case
the
basis?
person that's doing the application, they submit a well log that shows the aquifer materials. And then based on the location of that well, distance to the stream, its depth,
So
its...
it could be denied even though it's inside the boundary because it would be dangerous to
The location and timing is still subject to the aquifer properties that are encountered. And there can be a wide range of aquifer types and characteristics within that area.
So did that help?
Well, it leads me then to question, who's going to, and I don't want to use the word police, who's going to verify that the water, I shouldn't say the water, that the aquifer description, I think that's your term, the aquifer description of that well log is tributary to the stream where you have surface water present that you can release. Does that fall to you, or does that fall to the state engineer?
It's a two-step process. First, it's quantified by the district and then submitted to the Division of Water Resources for review and approval or denial.
And importantly, as I mentioned earlier, as with any other well permit, there's an opportunity to submit comments. So there's a good chance that for the vast majority of this augmentation area, you personally don't care about the well because it's far enough away from your property, there's no chance it impacts it. But if by chance an application ever gets filed for a well that's within an area that you're concerned about, you'll have notice, you'll have a chance to comment to the state engineer, and if you don't like what he says, you can protest it, and now we, along with that applicant, are in water court bearing the burden of proof that there is no injury, that the depletion is in the segment of the stream where we think it is. But Mr. Kanda, I believe, said something, I'm not sure if you heard it, but he really hit the nail on the head. Just because a well is within our blue line does not automatically mean it gets to be augmented. It could be denied when they submit that well log and that well permit application because the state engineer says that depletion is not going to hit the stream where you're saying it's going to hit the stream. So that was a very important observation, so thank you for pointing out what we failed to point out.
Well, what you're saying is to make sure that that application is denied. If there's a question, it falls on every one of us in this room to watch for that and then spend the money to object to it. So you're speculating that you're going to offer water to the entire blue line, and you're going to rely on us to actually police whether the water is tributary or not. And I think that's a sham.
No.
How is it not a sham?
The division engineers have to look at it before it would ever go for their approval, before it would ever move any further forward, Robert.
But you just said that I would have to object to it.
No, after that, if the state, if you think that there's a problem, you can come and tell us at any time, there's a problem right here. We're still going to go through the process. The engineer's going to look at it, look at all the well logs, and then he's going to submit his review to the division engineer's office. If they say, no, we agree with Robert Miller, there is injury here, you can't replace that, it's denied. But if they say, no, we agree, you can replace this, and you still disagree, you would still have the opportunity then, and it would be incumbent upon you to come into water court. But you still have that opportunity.
But you just set up that if I disagree with the state engineer, I can go to water court. But you said I have to, that the state engineer may agree or disagree with me before the state engineer releases his opinion.
The state engineer is going to agree or disagree with our engineering.
Okay, that's
And the
good.
comments.
And all the comments. So you can comment or nothing at that point. But then if you disagree with the state's agreement or consensus, whatever you want to call it, with the districts, then it would be incumbent upon you to file and go into water court. But you do have some options prior to that.
So I guess my last question would be, when we were in January in Salida, you said you would not push this forward if there was any chance of injury. Looks to me like there's a lot of chance for injury. Why do you support that chance?
I don't think there is a chance for injury with the engineering that we're putting forward. Robert, I feel very comfortable.
Your geologist says he hasn't studied that.
He's going to look at every well log. And if there's a chance of injury when he looks at that well log, that well will not be augmented. You have my word on it. If there's a chance of injury at that time, it will not be augmented.
Okay, so we're kicking the can down the street. I understand.
Well, no.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
There was 2 or 3 back here.
Johnny Kemp.
It says there, shall, standards of approval, shall be approved with no injury, vested water rights, or retrieved. Well, we're on Taylor Creek drainage, okay? And earlier, he was talking about when for example, say under that, and they're calling for water, and at that point, any year that's, let's say, drought year or dry year, then we're gonna get our junior rights shut down. And so, how do you know that we're not gonna have injury to our water rights? I don't understand.
Donnie, and so here's the way I would answer that. Irregardless what the river call is, if I've augmented a well, I still have to release that water. I don't care if it's the driest. There's no water anywhere. That's why we have all that storage vessels. I still have to release that water into the stream. I can't change the river call. That may call you out, but I'm still going to put the water back into the stream.
In the North Taylor water?
Yeah, absolutely, because it would come out of Conquistador, and I don't know exactly where you're at, but that's where that water is going to come out of. Okay, there was another one right there.
Yeah. Well, according to your blue line, is Round Mountain Water and Sanitation obligated to deal with you, buy water from you or whatever, where you're overlaying what they have in there?
No, absolutely not. Round Mountain Water and Sanitation is their own entity. They do their own thing. Now, that doesn't mean they
Why
could...
didn't you go around them then?
But he said, why didn't we go around them then?
Why doesn't your blue line just go around Round Mountain Water and Sanitation instead of overlay over the top of it?
Believe it or not, they actually have asked that maybe they could use some of our water to help supplement them.
Well, this is just question.
Well, and that's my answer
And then
back.
with your your proposed augmentation plan, if someone else comes in and buys a right out of the augmentation line here and wants to send water down Great Creek, are you gonna stand there with your hand up?
No, absolutely not. That's not my
Another
water.
thing that bothers us all, because the water's here with us. We have the water. You obviously want it. Trading Twin Lakes water into Conquistador Pond here, you can do all kinds of stuff on paper, but there ain't no pipeline coming from the river to put water in. And some of us know the ditches. So that's all I've got.
I think the creek's the pipeline.
Okay, so let me just ask, are you sure you understand the exchange and how our exchange?
I can figure that out.
If there's not live water, I can't do it. That man sitting right there won't let me. So there has to be live water or I cannot exchange. So irregardless, that's why I wanted to make certain that everyone understood. And I'm not. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I can't fix everything. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I'll just try to answer the question to the best of my ability.
I understand.
Okay. There was another question right here.
In regards to Don Camper's question about dry year and his water rights dried up because of the fall downstream, could he as a rancher buy more water on a dry year like that from from you guys?
Yes, we have been entering into that. In fact, we've done that in Chaffee County now for the last several years in the amount of about 200 acre-feet of water that we have made available for that guys so they could get their alfalfa irrigated under their pivots.
And what was the price? And I was going to say, it's an affordable price.
$50 an acre foot. $50 an acre foot. Much reduced rate from what it would cost for other uses.
Hear that? And here, I think that's important, isn't it, for the
Much
ranchers?
reduced rate.
$50 per acre foot?
So if you got 100 acres, but an acre foot water rights, I seldom see big. I didn't fix my hair.
Okay. Are we good?
I think so, but I wanted your opinion on, is that affordable for a rancher?
No.
Because how much is that going to cost him a year?
Well, make sure you tell those two ranchers in Chaffee County, Bill, that it's not affordable and they shouldn't do it.
They have sprinkler irrigation. They can put the water on uniformly a small amount.
Good point.
So,
But it was affordable for them.
Was it?
Well, they did it.
Well, I know. What did it pencil out? You put up the hay on the place.
It pencils out very good.
But I think your point was flood irrigation on Canadian that's what we get.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So it can be done.
It absolutely can be done.
Right.
George?
For those of you who may not know, I'm George Sedaris. I'm the manager for Round Mountain. As the county has been done, we are also filing opposition to the case, not necessarily because we're in opposition to the case, but we need to be at the table. We've already talked to Terry, and we're going to be preparing our concerns. So if somebody has a concern regarding, Round Mountain and how things work, send us a letter, let us know. Round Mountain is also, or was also, part of the H2O fight. We were in that from day one and spent a lot of Round Mountain water money trying to protect the water rights here in the valley. We are also participating with them regarding the study on the alluvium aquifer and the water balance here in the valley. So, yes, we are concerned about how all of this works. If you have a concern, let us know. but having taken a look at it, there are a lot of opportunities for Round Mountain to utilize the water that may be available to us at a much cheaper cost than us developing our own water rights and possibly drying up additional farmland. And let's see, I had one more thought. Yeah, well, I'm getting old.
Wait 1 second. Daryl?
Well, I think what a lot of people are kind of having problems, and I'm one of them, is your physical water and your water on paper, and how it works. So take the example like Don's water, right? He is a river call down there, you know, whatever it is, and you can't use his water, but you can take this augmentation plan and replace this water out of these wells that it's taking. How's that going to help him if there's no water in the creek?
It doesn't. I'm putting that water back into the creek.
Not above him. Or he can physically
Okay,
use
that's
it.
what I don't know.
See,
So,
that's what the problem that I can see.
okay, so we're going to go back to that sweeping. We can't augment anything above the calling priority on the creek. Okay, so I don't know without going out there and seeing where that is. But Kendall?
So, I mean, we may have to get a little more specific in terms of, are we helping him or are we preventing injury to him? Because the plan's not necessarily going to be able to help everyone in all instances. Yes, technically there will be the ability to lease water to ranchers in a super dry year. Practically, we're not going to have we can't help every rancher. We don't have the water to do that, and it may not be at a price that every rancher can afford. So is it going to be all things to all people? No. We're sorry. But, you know, we're working piecemeal to try to provide more and more service as time goes on. But the question is the plan going to injure him? And the answer there, we believe, is no. If he is called out a priority already by a downstream senior in La Junta, he can't be injured by what the plan is doing. But if if you have a well user who is, pumping water anywhere above La Junta, and that use of water is not being augmented, theoretically that out of priority use of water could injure the water right in La Junta, which makes them put on their call, which puts him out of priority. So unaugmented use, unlawful use of water does have the ability to cause the injury. But under the plan, where all of the depletions are replaced in time, location, and amount, there is no injury because that downstream water user in La Junta is getting the exact same quantity of water as they would get if the plan was not operating at all and that well didn't exist. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Kind of muddy. The ditch is still muddy, and I get that. Here's what I'm going to say. We're running out of time. I applaud every one of you for coming. I don't want this to be the last meeting. You guys know me. Pick up the phone and say, Tim, get your sorry ass back up here. Excuse me, lady. We got some questions that we're not getting. And I'm going to bring these educated folks with me that's supposed to be able to answer them. I want this thing, if there's doubt, let's try to get it out. This goes back to the county commissioners. Guys, you got to talk to us. I want that communication. Let's not wait till the last minute. Tom, let's not make this the last meeting. Give me your input. Bring the questions. Let's try to get these questions back. That's where I'm coming from. So I know we're running out of time. And these guys all want to say something up here. Yes, ma'am.
I'll try to be real brief. If the papers that are here, the reporters, I so hope they don't report
the commissioners are filing a complaint against it, and Round Mountain's filing a complaint, because we've heard here that it's just so that they're in the process and talking, and I so hope the reporters make that clear.
You heard me tell them I applaud them for doing that.
Yes.
That's absolutely,
Yeah.
they get every bit of information.
And I'll add to my comment, as a realtor, every realtor here has had water law classes. I think I've had maybe 10 and 20 years. Each one that I've had, I get dumber about water. So, and I mean that.
That's a bad thing.
And it is very, very difficult. And it is concepts that, you know, it's not written out in paper in black and white. So I applaud you guys for coming down as many times as you can to make sure that everybody in the county has some kind of clear understanding of it. If it's not the whole understanding, that's okay.
You're starting to sound like Nancy Pelosi, even your hand gestures.
It was brought to my attention before the meeting started by a board member that I might have a conflict of interest because I'm on the San Isabel Land Protection Board as well as this board. Is that going to be a problem for the board of directors?
Do you feel that you
That'll be a question we'll take up at our board meeting.
Okay, yeah. I appreciate you bringing it here. This is a work session.
Okay.
But if we're going to discuss that and actually take any action, it should be at a regular board meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear to everybody in the room.
Okay. So I saw a hand down here ahead of you, Tom, and then I'll get back.
Well, thanks, Tim. I want to address the notion that an exchange is not like having a pipeline from the river to Custer County. I believe you have two significant pipelines from Custer County, or from the river to Custer County, and that's Texas Creek and Grape Creek. And the problem is, those pipelines are open all the time, and they're always flowing from Custer County to the river. Some of you have water rights, some of you have spigots on those pipelines, and your decrees allow you to turn them on at times, and you got to turn them off at other times. And in the winter, most of you don't take any advantage of whatever water right you might have. It's just a pipeline draining the water down. In the winter, or at times of real high flow, when water rights up here are being satisfied, an exchange allows you to turn down the valve that's letting all that water out of this county and into the main stem, and keep some back up here in the storage that we've been working on developing. So there really is a physical means of keeping the water here as opposed to some kind of shell game shuffle. We're just turning down the valve at the top end instead of the bottom end and letting some of that water stay here to then be used for all of these augmentation type beneficial uses that were described earlier.
Okay, Tom.
I just wanted to say, and I know we're out of time, and you mentioned it, to say that you as a board are open to questions, concerns, and comments from us. And I want to say to this group and anybody else in the community, the Board of County Commissioners is hosting a public hearing / workshop here on February the 11th to gain more input for us to bring to you. Because it's hard for us to survey this community as a whole and come to you with questions. So that's what that's about on February the 11th. We intentionally schedule that prior to your meeting. It's 23rd.
No.
The next board meeting, I don't know. It's in our calendar.
14th.
Okay. So, yeah, that's right. 14th. So I would invite everybody here and anybody that you feel is appropriate to be here to come back on February the 11th at 7:30 in the evening, and the commissioners will have a conversation and take as many questions as you can. Not necessarily try to answer them, but to put those in a package to bring to the board. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Any of my other board members?
Okay.
Anybody down here? Ken Baker.
Speak loudly.
Speak loudly. I'm the old guy on the team today, but I want to give you a little bit of the history of why we're here and what we do. We're here because the engineer was operating the irrigation administration on the Arkansas River in a manner that didn't comply with an agreement between the state of Kansas and the state of Colorado. It's called the Kansas-Colorado Treaty. I was an irrigator, like many of you have been irrigated, but we irrigated in a different way back then. We had a shovel and a ditch. It wasn't till later that sprinklers came along, and I had a side roll. Later on, I had a pivot. But those weren't the methods that were being used in 1948. And when Kansas entered into the agreement with Colorado, they said, don't change your irrigation practices. Well, the state engineer was very generous in the way he administered the river. And one day, sometime 40 years after the compact, Kansas sued Colorado, said, you quit. You're not administering it the way you should. We knew that. That's why we organized in 1979, because we knew that they weren't administering the way they should, and we needed some kind of an entity, and we'll call it a water conservation district, to give a voice to that. We organized the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District. Later on, Kansas happened to win their argument. And the special master said to the engineer, you're not doing it right. You go back to December 14, 1948. Any irrigation practice after that has to allow the water to get into the stream and down to Kansas to get the Kansas appropriation. The engineer was struggling with a dilemma. It just so happened that the Upper District had instructed me to file a plan for augmentation under the 69 Act, and I did that. We had very little water. It was going to be an augmentation plan basically for our Chaffee County area. And I filed it. We struggled. I had an innovation going. I got the engineer to help me, and he did. I got other attorneys to help me, and they did, because they felt that we needed something like that. And we finally got to the point of tipping one way or the other, and the state engineer called us into his office and said, I need your help, and this is the way it's going to be. And he instructed the Assistant Attorney General and me to draw up an agreement, which we call an order, to go to the court, set some new rules on how we would do our augmentation. And in the meantime, that engineer filed an application with the water court. And that application then became the amended rules and regulations for administration of irrigation on the Arkansas. It is in effect today. It's a very powerful, strong set of instructions that said irrigation has to be done in a special way. And one of the things that happened, the engineer had to put everybody on the priority system. There were any number of small business houses up here in Custer County that were operating their wells without authority. But the engineer was gracious. He let them do it. Along came the new rules. They had to have a priority. In order for them to continue to operate, he needed us to give them the assistance under an augmentation plan. That is what we got started. In Custer County, we weren't there. Joe Reed and the Board of Commissioners applied to our board and said, would you let Ken Baker help us join your district? And the board said, okay. Commissioners went to court with me and asked that Custer County be allowed to become a part of the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District. I just want to let you know the history of this case. Custer County has been a partner with us and will continue to be a partner with us. Whether these rules affect you or not, we're going to try to help you with our augmentation system. Thank you.
You're up. Wait.
I want to go down the line.
One minute, Bob, and then I'll let you have it. I'm not done.
I'm not either.
On the cast kind going into the conquistador pond, is that, if there's water in the creek, is it administered to the conquistador pond on the historical agricultural time frame of use, or can it become, or has it become a continuous flow into the pond? And furthermore, I understand the benefit for the Conquistador Pond and Lake Deweese for the Round Mountain Water and Sanitation. But I was curious about the overlays of the blue lines. But I'd like my other question answered.
Jerry?
I'll answer your question. The decree, that 10 CW 30 decree that they are a part of, has diversion limits that are monthly and annual. And so they cannot place a call on Mount Water, that Katzenstein water, until April 1st. And they cannot place a call on that Katzenstein water after September 30th to mirror the historical irrigation practice. So
That answers that. Now, the next question. With your water storage in Lake Deweese, is that water storage in a volume amount based on the release from the Kastenstein ditch, or from out of the Conquistador Pond down, and you're further using storing it again in Deweese Dye, or where is your right to get store more water in Deweese Reservoir?
Two separate rights. And so Kendall, go ahead.
The right to store water in Deweese is pursuant to two separate agreements. But that is simply space in a bucket.
Well, I'm talking about actual water.
Yeah, so the water we can put in that bucket is any water that we can get there physically and legally. It could be 8 Katzenstein ditch water that we don't have space for in Deweese or in Conquistador. It could be Twin Lakes water that we release down the main stem of the Arkansas and exchange up Grape Creek into Deweese during times when there's no call in that intervening stretch of Grape Creek, as Mr. Felt described it, like wintertime water. We turn down the pipeline of the water flowing out of the valley. That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm done, Bob. Now you can have it.
I'm not going to speak as loud or as long as he has, I assure you. But I do want to thank everybody for coming. And I do want to make just a couple of quick comments. And we do have a monthly meeting at our offices up in Salida. And anybody is welcome to those meetings at any time. They are open meetings. The other day when we had the county commissioners up, we had, I don't know what we had, probably around 20 minutes to a half an hour maximum, and I don't know how much we finished up with you guys, but about at least a couple of hours. So we've done what we can at that point, and then we thought, this meeting. Now going forward, with this plan, we're going to be in court probably for a couple of years. So this meeting today, anything we're doing, this is not the final answer. Okay? So I do want to say one other thing. I have personally been in front of numerous groups in this community talking about water and trying to keep people abreast the best that I could possibly do. Coupled with that, I also want everyone to know that for a number of years I was asked to give a quarterly report to the county commissioners of Custer County, which I did, and tried to answer any questions as we went along. We also set up a group of people that we have asked to be ex officio members of our board. So what we have done, we have asked the county commissioners of each county to be ex officio members, and Tom is the representative for Custer County, and he's been at our meetings now for a little over a year, I guess, Tom. So he is the liaison between us and the county commissioners. And he then would be keeping them up to date as to what's going on. George spoke a little bit a while ago. He is also an ex officio member and has been very active in coming to our meetings. And I do have to give some kudos to Round Mountain Water and Sanitation District. When we talked about the H2O ranch, there were two people or two organizations that were the last ones to get out of that fight. And I thank Round Mountain for being one of those last two. They stayed in that fight to protect the water, not only that they have, but for this community. So they've done a job. They've been in there. They spent the money. Okay? We do have ex officio members from all the counties. I think we have probably somewhere in the neighborhood, I'll just say, of a dozen different ex officio members that come to our meetings, take that information back to their organizations in a form of communications. The other issue that I want to hit on is we do have a website, and it's UAWCD.com. Almost every question that has been on the table here today, for the most part, you can get that information off of our website. So that is another way of our communication back to the communities and the people that we serve. I did want to quick ask my board members if there's anybody that would like to make a comment. I'll start at this end as a wrap-up. Tom?
Bob, I would just like to make the comment that we can't even think of the number of ways that the augmentation water has helped the community here today. In Chaffey and Fremont County, it's helped existing restaurants stay in business. It's helped schools. It's helped gravel pit. It helps the county sprinkle the roads. Water use, that's simple. You know, because when the going gets tough and Kansas starts looking down everybody's throat at where the water's going, then at this time, Custer County and Fremont County have water made available by the upper district so they can sprinkle the roads when they're grading.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
I gotta go.
He's got to go. Okay, but he has talked, and I thank you, Commissioner, for coming up, and I know you have another meeting, so. Okay, take off. Thanks. Thanks, Greg.
See you, Greg. Okay.
So, comment?
Yeah, I gotta go too.
You got to go too? Okay, Commissioner Tim Crane out of Fremont County. I know they have other appointments. We knew that, so thanks for coming. Terry, do you have anything? No. No? Gentlemen?
I have one thing. I skipped that gentleman right there, and I just remembered it. You had your hand up. I apologize.
Now, I was wondering if Colorado Springs buys water, are they still subject to calls? And how is that monitored? I mean, who's going to tell Colorado Springs that
Jerry is?
That guy right there.
The policeman, Jerry, and if it gets bigger, he's going to have to hire help.
I'll give you his phone number. Okay.
That's it.
Rich, do you have anything?
I personally see it as a positive for the community. That's my feeling. But I know that this board wants to hear from all of you and see what your consensus is.
Okay, Bill? Nothing? Tom?
Just a quick comment. When that line was drawn, it was really geared toward the calling water rights. And we're in Canyon City, and we are just outside of that blue line. And there's a real advantage if you're in the blue line, and the advantages versus outside. And it's really designed to protect the water rights, like you're talking about. You know, if there's a well or whatever, and that's why it was drawn that way. And I wish that the line was just a little bit past, so we were able.
Okay, I think one of my final comments, and we really didn't hit on it, but I think it's really important, is every month we're talking about getting the resume. So that's a document that comes out to the Water Engineer's Office, District 2, of everything that's going on in the, primarily in the Arkansas River is what we're interested in. So we are in water cases almost on a continuous basis, and at one point, I think we're in probably a dozen different cases. And everything that we do with those cases in water court directly or indirectly affects this valley. So we are continuously working and trying to protect the water rights in Custer County. So thank you all for coming. We'll do a wrap. I guess we've gone 25 minutes over, so I apologize for that. But I think there's been a lot of good questions, and hopefully we've all learned a little bit, but maybe some of us got a little confused and we're going to have more questions. So thanks for coming.
Thanks, Bob.